Hi everybody, thanks for being here. It is an honor to have a new opportunity for sharing my last work, avoiding the death of SRE documents that matter. Nice to meet you. I am Yury Nino. I am Colombian. I work as cloud infrastructure engineer at Google Cloud. Also, I am chaos engineering and site reliability engineering advocate. You can find me in LinkedIn, Twitter, and Medium as Yury Nino. Regarding this talk, I have to say that this material is the result of a lot of reading and self-learning, trying to build a framework for documenting my exercises in chaos engineering. In this path, I found an excellent article titled Why SRE Documents Matter, written by Sijala Nukala and Vivek Rao, who are SRE product managers in Google. I'm going to start with this. After that, I am going to describe a non-extensive list of SRE documents, which were completed using the book Seeking SRE. With this in mind, I am going to share some recommendations that I have learned while I was studying about this exciting topic. Since you know what about SRE is, just to share this, site reliability engineering is a job function, a mindset, and a set of engineering approaches for making web products and services run reliably. SRE operates an intersection of software development and system engineering to solve operational problems and engineer solutions to build and run large-scale distributed systems. SRE is focused on the life cycle of services from inception and design through development, operation, refinement, and eventual decommissioning. In these phases, SRE provides principles and practices for monitoring and metrics. It is about measuring how the service is actually behaving and correcting discrepancies. Emergency response, in other words, noticing and responding to service failures in order to preserve their availability according to SLAs. Capacity planning, it is very important here. That means projecting future demand and ensuring that a service has enough computing resource in appropriate locations to satisfy that demand. Service turn up and turn down, deploying and removing computing resources for a service in a data center in a predictable fashion, often as a consequence of capacity planning. Change management, about alerting the behavior of a service while preserving service reliability, and performance regarding design, development, and engineering related to scalability, isolation, latency, throughput, and efficiency. Regarding documentation, I would like to share that according to this Stack Overflow 2022 developer survey, the most important resource for people to learn how to code is technical documentation. However, the same participants rank documentation as the number 2 challenge facing developers. This is a problem because missing, incomplete, or outdated documentation hurts development velocity, software quality, and something that is critical for SRE's service reliability. So let me join this idea with the reason for documenting SRE processes. The teams used to preserve the important operational concepts and principles as nuggets of trivial knowledge that are passed on verbally to new team members. And it is a fact that is the concepts and principles are not codified and documented. They often need to be relearned painfully through trial and error. In this sense, documents are very important for many reasons. They help developers communicate with each other, and they allow to future developers understand and maintain the code. In general, good documentation helps you learn from your mistakes. SREs often spend 35% on their time on operational work, which leave only 65% for development. This last person includes time for documenting, of course. However, documentation takes time and effort, and it is especially challenging for SREs. It can be a major cause of frustration and job unhappiness for developers. Some developers consider that documenting might not be recognized or rewarded during performance review or promotion processes. Having mentioned the importance and the challenge of documentation, let me focus on the type of SRE documents. According to the article Why SRE Documents Matter, remember this presentation is based on this article, they can be classified in these categories. Documents for running a service, documents for new service onboarding, documents for reporting service state, documents for production products, documents for service decommissioning, and documents for running SRE teams. So let me explore the documents in each category in the next slide. Documents for new service onboarding. These documents, the documents in this category belong to a more general concept. I am talking about PRR, or Production Readiness Review. A PRR is conducted to make sure that a service meets accepted standards of operational readiness and the owners have a necessary guidance about running them. So let me go through in the specific documents for Production Readiness Review. And the first one is actually a diagram. The architecture and dependencies, which provide answers for why is your request flow from user to front end to back end, and there are different types of requests with different latency requirements. Review now the capacity planning. It is a document with answers for these questions. How much traffic and rate of growth do you expect during and after the launch? And have you obtained all the compute resources needed to support your traffic? Another important document here is failure modes, which provide answers for do you have any single points of failure in your design? How do you mitigate unavailability of your dependencies? About processes and automation, these are the questions. Are any manual processes required to keep the service running? And how are we automating these processes? Finally, in this subcategory of documents for new service onboarding, remember we were talking about production readiness review documents. The main objective with this document is answering these questions. What third-party code, data, services, or events do the service or the launch depend upon? Do any partners depend on your service? If so, do they need to be notified of your release? In addition to PRRs, in this first category includes documents for onboarding service. The SRE organization needs to create overview documents that explain the SRE role and responsibilities in general terms to product development teams. This serves to set their expectations correctly. A primary goal of this document is to ensure that developer teams don't equal SREs with an operations team. When developers don't fully understand what SREs do, miscommunication and misunderstanding can result. Another important document here is the engagement model document that explains how the SRE team which engage with developer teams during and after service takeover. Topics covered with this document includes service takeover criteria and PRR process, SLO negotiation process and error budgets, new release criteria and release freeze policies, content and frequency of service status report from SRE team, SRE staffing requirements, and future roadmap planning processes. If you remember, SREs need to be effective across two domains, development and operations. So they need documentation to understand and run service and production. Example of the core documents include service overviews, playbooks and procedures, postmortems, policies, and SLAs. So let me review each one. SRE needs to know the system architecture. Components are dependencies and service contacts and owners. These overviews as often an output of PRR process, and they should be updated as service change. For example, if you include a new dependency in the service. A complete service overview provides a whole description of the service and how it interacts with the world around it, as well as links to dashboards, metrics, and related information that SREs needs to solve unexpected issues. Also called runbooks, I love this type of documents. I am talking about playbooks. The on-call engineers respond to alerts generated by service monitoring. Playbooks reduce the time to mitigate an incident and they provide useful links to consoles and procedures. Playbooks can contain instructions for verification, troubleshooting, and escalation for each alert generated from network monitoring processes that contain commands and steps to review for accuracy. It is a classical, as you know, remember a software postmortem. It is an analysis conducted after a system failure. Each postmortem derived from this template describes a production outage, timeline, description of user impact, root cause, action items, and lesson learned. Technical policies. In this slide, I am going to talk about policies, and the first one is technical policies. Technical policies can apply to areas such as production change logging, log retention, and internal service naming. Policies also apply to processes. Escalation policies help engineers classify production issues and emergencies or non-emergencies and provide recommendations on the appropriate action for each category. And on-call expectation policies outline the structure of the team and responsibilities of the team members. An SLA is a formal agreement with a customer on the performance of a service. SRE teams document their services for availability, latency, and monitor performance. Note, having SLAs allows SRE teams to innovate more quickly while preserving a good user experience. SREs running services with well-defined SLAs will detect outage faster and therefore resolve them faster. Good SLAs also result in less friction between SRE and software engineers. That is classical, no? In the next slides, I am going to describe documents that are related to the products and tools SREs documents develop. These documents are important because they enable users to find out whether a product is right for them or to adopt, how to get started and how to get support. They also provide a consistent user experience and facilitate production adoption. This helps SREs and product development engineers to understand what the product or tool is and what it does and whether they should use it. In the next slides, I am going to describe documents that are related to the products and tools SREs develop. These documents are important because they enable users to find out whether a product to adopt. Let me start with these guides. A concept guide or glossary which define all the terms unique to the product. Our goal of a quick start guide is to get engineers up and running with a minimum of delay. It is helpful to new users who want to give a product a try. How to guide. This type of document is for users who need to know how to accomplish a specific goal with the product, how to help users complete important specific tasks, and they are general procedure-based. Finally, engineers use development guides, that is really, really important here, to find out how to program to a product APIs. Engineers can use code labs or tutorials. You can find in Google, for example, as tutorials, combining explanation, example code, and code exercise to get up to speed with the product. Code labs can also provide in-depth scenarios that walk engineers step by step draw a series of key tasks. I really like this. The fact page answers common questions. Also, the common answers, this points users to reference documents and other pages on the site for more information. The support page, which identifies how engineers can get help when they are stuck on something. It also includes an escalation flow, troubleshooting info, group links, dashboard, and SLO, and on-call information. An API reference is usually generated from code comments and sometimes written by tech writers. This provides description on functions, classes, and methods, with minimal verbose or narratives. This part describes the documents that SRE teams produce to communicate the state of the services they support. Information about the state of a service comes in two forms: quarterly service review and a presentation about this. The goal of the quarterly report or presentation is to cover the state of the service review, including details about performance, sustainability, risk, and overall production health. SREs leads and are interested in quarterly reports because they provide visibility into the following: on-call tickets, postmortems, performance of SLA, risk, quarterly reports also provide opportunities for SRE team to highlight the benefits of SRE, prioritization for solving problems, and request feedback about the SRE team focus. SRE teams need to have a cohesive set of reliable, discoverable documentation to function effectively as a team. So it is a good practice to create a team site with a team charter because it provides a focal point for information and documents about the SRE teams and its projects. At Google, for example, many SRE teams use G3 Docs. That is an internal documentation platform where documentation and source code live. Specifically, team charters explains the rationale for the teams and documents its current major engagement. A charter serves to establish the team identity, primary goals, and role relative to the rest of the organization. A charter generally includes the following elements: a high-level explanation of the space in which the team operates, a short description of the top 2 or 3 services managed by the team, the key principles and service and values for the team, and the links to the team sites and documents. SRE teams invest in training materials and processes for new SREs because training results in a faster onboarding to production environment. SRE's team also benefits from having new members acquire the skills required to join the ranks of on-call as early as possible. In the absence of comprehensive training, the SRE could found during a crisis or during a potential minor incident to a major outage. Many SRE teams use checklists for on-call training. An on-call checklist generally covers all high-level areas team members should understand why. Examples of these include production concepts, front-end and back-end stack, automation and tools, and monitoring and logs. SREs also use role-play training drills. For example, in Google, we use Wheel of Misfortune, which is an educational tool for training teams members. In this exercise, an outage scenario is presented to the team. With the data, the team members take turn of playing the role of the on-call engineer in order to mitigate any emergency. Role play exercise tests the ability of the SREs to know where to find the documentation and to use it for solving the hypothetical incident. Let me finish with this presentation with some recommendations from Google to keep live documents. The first one is communicating the value of documentation. That is very important. That is my first recommendation. If you want to combine fellow engineers and leadership to invest time and resource in documentation, it is essential that you gather data that demonstrates the quality, effectiveness, and the value of your documentation. Remember, when you talk about the impact of your documentation work, you are talking about the business value for your output. So while structured quality pretty easy to measure, functional data is convincing. Remember that. It falls in 3 buckets: measurable success, user behavior, and sentiment data. The second one is to create a centralized repository. SRE team information can be distributed across a number of sites, local team knowledge, and Google Drive folders, for example, which can make it difficult to find correct and relevant information. So it is really important to define a structure for all information and ensure that the team members know where is to start, find, and maintain information. That is the most important. Here are some guidelines to create and manage a team documentation repository. Determine relevant stakeholders and conduct brief interviews to identify all needs. Locate as much documentation as possible and do a gap analysis on content. Set up a basic structure for the site, and the new documentation can be created in the correct location. Create a monitoring and reporting structure to track the progress of migration. Archive of documentation, that is very important. Verify which common terms are used in search features, for example. And finally, use signals such as Google Analytics to track and analyze usage. After you determine the functional requirements and quality indicators for each document, it is really valuable to create templates. Templates make it easy for authors to create new documentation and providing that clear structure that they can populate with relevant information. With a good template, creating a simple document can be easy as filling out form. Templates make easy for readers to quickly understand the topic of the document, the type of information, and how it is organized. The Site Reliability Engineering book contains several documentation templates. Here are an example of playbook template that provides a structure and guidance for engineers filling in the content. Another important documentation is defining success metrics. It is essential if you want to be able to communicate the value of your work to the rest of your organization. For example, a service review has a high functionality quality if it provides the SRE the context needed to handle in the outage, and if you have the possibility to measure the impact in the organization. It is important to have a guidance from technical writers because they provide a lot of support that make SRE documents are effective and productive. Here are some guidance to work with technical writers. Technical writers should partner with SREs to provide operational documentation for running services and product documentation for SRE products and features. Writers should provide consulting to assess and address documentation and information management needs. Writers should evaluate and improve documentation tools to provide the best solution for SREs. That are my recommendation when you are working with technical writers. Finally, require documents as part of code review. Documentation is like testing. Nobody really wants to do it. But if you can minimize this sentiment, taking advantage of code reviewers' powers. Not all changes requires documents updates, of course, but here a good rule of thumb. Doing documents better, best practices. If a developer, SRE, or user of your project needs to change their behavior after this change, the changes should include document change. That is the recommendation here. Require this as part of code review. And that is all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for listening this presentation. I really hope that it will be useful for you. Thank you. Have a good day.